I worked myself to the bone for this family for 10 years, and what did I get in return? Being treated like a fool. My partner teamed up with his mother, trying to swallow up everything I owned before marriage. They thought I was still the same soft, easy-to-push-around pushover. They forgot one thing. Even a cornered rabbit will bite. This time, I wasn't just going to make them spit back everything they'd taken. I was going to make sure their reputations were completely ruined. 01. The day we went to the county recorder's office, the weather was perfect. Bright, clear, and sunny. My mood matched it exactly. After 10 years of marriage, we were finally getting a home that truly belonged to us, completely ours. And it was in a top-rated school district. It would be convenient for the kids' future schooling and spacious enough for my parents to stay with us when they visited. The down payment on the house, $2 million, came entirely from my parents. Michael Wilson's family wasn't well off. I knew that, so I never expected them to contribute. Back then, I didn't even ask for an engagement gift or anything like that. I believed that as long as two people lived honestly and steadily together, that mattered more than anything else. At the time, Michael held me tightly, his eyes red, and promised me, "Emma, I'll remember what your parents have done for us for the rest of my life. I'll handle the mortgage on my own. Don't worry. I'll never let you suffer." I believed him. For 10 years, I kept the household running perfectly and took meticulous care of him. His mother, my mother-in-law, Barbara Wilson, came over every few days just to pick fights. She said I spent money recklessly, said I didn't know how to manage a household. I swallowed it all. For Michael. For our little family. Today was supposed to be the day everything finally paid off. There weren't many people at the recorder's office. We got our number quickly. The clerk was a young woman, very polite, carefully checking our information line by line. Michael Wilson, Emma Davis, correct? Yes. Michael smiled broadly and pulled me a little closer to his side. My heart felt sweet. The clerk continued reading. Property co-owners, Michael Wilson, Barbara Wilson, Emma Davis. Wait, my head buzzed, like I'd been hit with a blunt blow. I thought I'd misheard. Instinctively, I asked, "Sorry, could you repeat the names of the co-owners?" The clerk repeated calmly, "Michael Wilson, Barbara Wilson, and Emma Davis. 3 people. Barbara." My mother-in-law. The blood drained from my body. I turned my head and stared straight at Michael. A flash of unease crossed his face, but he quickly steadied himself and forced a smile. "Emma, look at me. I was so busy I forgot to tell you. My mom heard we were buying a house and insisted on putting in some money just to show her support. I figured we're all family anyway, so adding her name would make her happy." I looked at him and felt like I was staring at a complete stranger. "How much did she put in?" My voice was shaking. "Oh, come on. She put in $50,000. She even took it out of her retirement savings," Michael said, utterly self-righteous. $50,000 out of a $1. $2 million down payment, she put in $50,000 and wanted her name on the deed? That was when a voice I knew all too well and hated just as much cut in from the side. "Oh, my dear girl, why are you standing there frozen? Hurry up and sign." Look how devoted Michael is. He insisted on adding my name, said he wanted to properly thank me for that $50,000. I told him it wasn't necessary, but he just wouldn't listen. I turned my head and saw Barbara walking over, dressed in a brand new bright red dress, a thick gold necklace hanging around her neck, her face glowing with pride. Behind her trailed a few of her old friends, clearly invited to witness her good fortune. She walked up to me, grabbed the pen from the clerk's hand, shoved it into mine, and ordered without a trace of doubt, "Emma, stop dragging your feet. There are people waiting behind us. Sign it? Once you do, this house will belong to our family." She deliberately stressed the words "our family." I looked at her shiny, smug face, at Michael's evasive eyes, at the eager, gossip-hungry expressions of the elderly women behind him. In that moment, something inside me shattered completely. 10 years of compromise. 10 years of swallowing my pride. To them, it was all a joke. I was just the idiot they could deceive and bully whenever they pleased. They couldn't even be bothered to pretend anymore. They laid their naked scheme right in front of me. All my anger, humiliation, and resentment vanished at once. All I felt was cold. Bone-deep cold. I looked at them and suddenly smiled. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I just stood there, calm, smiling. Barbara looked unsettled. What are you smiling at? Are you crazy? Michael grabbed my arm. Emma, don't do this. You're scaring me. It's just adding a name. We're all family. Don't overthink it, okay? I shook off his hand and ignored him. Slowly, I reached into my bag and took out another red booklet. I gently placed it on the counter. Then, smiling politely at the stunned young clerk, I said, "Hi, could you please help me check something? Has the property listed on this deed already been fully transferred into my name alone?" Michael, my mother-in-law, and her group of old friends, they all froze. Their eyes were drawn to that red booklet as if by a magnet locked onto it. On the cover, the words were printed clearly, Property Deed 02. The air seemed to freeze. The recorder's office had been noisy just moments ago, but now it felt as if all sound had vanished. Every pair of eyes in the room was fixed on our small counter. Michael's eyes went wide. He snatched the deed up, flipped it open, his fingers turning pale from how tightly he was gripping it. The moment he saw the address and the words sole owner, his face drained of all color. Emma? Where did this house come from? How do I not know about this? His voice shot up sharp and shrill, all his earlier composure gone. Barbara rushed over too. She couldn't read much, but she recognized the photo and my name. She grabbed the deed from his hands, flipping it back and forth, muttering to herself, "That's impossible. This can't be. Where did she get the money to buy a house? I keep track of every dollar she spends." Her group of old friends crowded in as well, craning their necks and whispering excitedly, "Oh my, Barbara, your daughter-in-law isn't simple at all. She hid a whole house from you? That's something. Judging by the location, this place must be expensive." Each comment was like a needle stabbing into Barbara's heart. Her face, which had been flushed with pride just moments ago, now shifted between red and white, an impressive sight really. I looked at them, and the icy lake inside my chest remained perfectly still. Unhurried, I took my deed back from Michael's hands and carefully slipped it into my bag, treating it as gently as a priceless treasure. Only then did I look up at him. "Michael, there are a lot of things you don't know," I said calmly. "Just like how I didn't know that the house we were buying together would have your mom's name added without my knowledge. I only did that because I'm being a good son," Michael stammered, sweat breaking out on his forehead. "My mom had it hard raising me, and besides, nothing's been signed yet, right? If you don't want her name added, then we won't add it." He made it sound so easy. If I hadn't pulled out this deed today, if I were still the old Emma who only knew how to cry and beg, would he be saying this now? He would have joined forces with his mom, treated me like a complete idiot, sweet-talked me, lied to me, and coaxed me into signing. And then the house bought with my parents' hard-earned money would no longer be 100% mine. Barbara finally caught on and immediately started making a scene. "Emma, you heartless, ungrateful wretch. Our boy works himself to the bone paying the mortgage, and you secretly squirrel away money to buy a house of your own? What are you plotting? You planned to divorce my boy from the very beginning and take all the property for yourself, didn't you?" Her shout drew everyone's attention in the room. I looked at her and smiled slightly. "Mom, you've got that wrong. First of all, this house was paid in full and is registered under my name alone. It's entirely my premarital property. It has nothing to do with my partner or with the Wilson family, not a single dollar." I paused, watching her mouth fall open in shock, then continued. "Second, the house we're buying now has a $1, $2 million down payment, all from my parents. Your $50,000 doesn't even count as spare change. You want your name added? Fine. Legally speaking, that would give you about 2% ownership. Oh, and the remaining mortgage should be paid according to ownership shares too. Michael pays 49% and I'll pay 49% as well. Does that sound fair to you?" Barbara's face turned green. Paying the mortgage herself? That would kill her. Michael panicked and rushed over to grab my arm. Emma, stop talking. We're family. Why calculate everything so precisely? Mom, you should stop too. He was trying to smooth things over. Unfortunately for him, I was no longer the lump of dough he could knead however he liked. Ignoring him, I continued to Barbara. If you think that's unfair, fine. I'll transfer your $50,000 to you right now. Today's deed will only have my name and Michael's on it. That works, doesn't it? As I spoke, I took out my phone, pretending I was about to make the transfer. Barbara was completely stunned. She had planned to get something for nothing, to put her name on the house without really paying for it. Now that I'd forced her hand, she was stuck. If she took the money back and didn't get her name on the deed, then calling all her friends over today would have been for nothing. Where would she put her face? But if she didn't take the money and had to help pay the mortgage, she definitely didn't want that either. Watching his mother caught in a bind, then looking at my cold expression, Michael finally realized things had spun out of control. He pressed down on my hand and lowered his voice, almost gritting his teeth. Emma, what exactly do you want? Do you really have to make such a scene today? I looked at him and said each word clearly. Michael, I'm not the one making things ugly. You and your mom are. Then I turned to the clerk, who hadn't said a word this whole time, and smiled apologetically. Sorry, we're having a family dispute. We won't be buying this house today. I picked up my bag and, under everyone's shocked stares, turned and walked away. At the entrance, I heard Barbara scream behind me. This is outrageous. Emma, stop right there. Michael chased after me and grabbed me at the door. Emma, don't be angry. I was wrong. I really was. I'll talk to my mom. I'll make her take the money back, okay? Please don't give up on this house. We spent so long looking before we finally chose it. I looked at his face full of panic and hypocrisy. Calmly, I said, Michael, let's get divorced. Versro. Number. Hook. The moment the word divorce left my mouth, even I froze for a second. 10 years. That word had always been taboo, something I never thought about and never dared to think about. But today, as I looked at Michael's face twisted in shock, I felt no hesitation at all. This road had reached its end. Michael looked like he'd been struck by lightning. He stared at me blankly for several seconds before snapping back to his senses, grabbing my shoulders and shaking me hard. Emma, have you lost your mind? Do you even know what you're saying? You're divorcing me over something this small? Something small. I looked at him and almost laughed. In your eyes, you and your mom teaming up to scheme over the down payment my parents gave me, keeping me completely in the dark and treating me like an idiot. That's a small thing? I didn't. I just wanted to make my mom happy. I thought you wouldn't mind. You thought? I cut him off. You thought I was some brainless, spineless doormat you could knead however you liked, didn't you? My voice wasn't loud, but every word hit him like an ice spike. He let go, panic flashing across his eyes. Just then, Barbara rushed out too. The moment she heard the word divorce, she exploded. Divorce. Go ahead and divorce. Who's afraid of who? My son is a manager. Do you think he won't be able to find another woman? Emma, let me tell you, once you leave the Wilson family, you'll have nowhere to cry. That house belongs to our family, and don't you dare think about taking a single dollar. She thought she had me by the throat. I looked at her ugly, vicious expression, and the very last trace of warmth in my heart vanished. I took out my phone and dialed a number right in front of them. Hi, Taylor. It's me, Emma. Taylor was my college classmate and my best friend, and now a top attorney at a well-known law firm. Her bright voice came through the phone. Emma? What made you call me? Did you finally close on the house and want to treat me to dinner? My eyes burned and I almost cried, but I held it in. This wasn't the time to cry. Taylor, I took a deep breath, forcing my voice to stay steady. I'm getting divorced. I need some legal advice. There was a brief silence on the other end. Then her tone turned serious. What happened? I told her everything that had happened at the recorder's office, fact by fact, without exaggeration, without emotion, as if I were telling someone else's story. Michael and Barbara stood right next to me, listening. Michael's face grew paler by the second, while Barbara looked utterly dismissive, as if hiring a lawyer were some kind of joke. When I finished, Taylor let out a cold laugh. I was wondering what the big deal was. Emma, don't be afraid. This is simple. First, do you still have the transfer records for the $1, $2 million your parents gave you? Does it clearly state that it was a gift to you personally? I thought for a moment. I have all the records. Back then, my dad was worried there might be disputes in the future, so he handwrote a gift agreement stating clearly that the money was gifted to me, Emma, personally, for the purchase of a marital home. Both Michael and I signed it. I used to think my dad was being overly cautious. Now, I was beyond grateful. Taylor laughed even harder. Your dad was brilliant. Then this is easy. That money is your premarital personal property, with a clear purpose. As for the house you're buying now, even though it's registered under both your names, when it comes to division, that money will be separated out as your personal asset first. In other words, at most, he can only get half of the appreciation from the mortgage portion, and that's assuming you can prove the mortgage was paid entirely by him. My heart skipped. What if I can prove that over the past 10 years, most household expenses, including part of the mortgage, were actually paid by me? Then he gets even less, Taylor said firmly. And don't forget, you also own a house outright. That's your personal property. He doesn't get to touch a single cent of it. At that, Michael's legs nearly gave out. He looked at me, fear and disbelief filling his eyes. He probably never imagined that the woman who had always been as gentle as a kitten would have everything calculated so clearly. Barbara, however, still hadn't grasped the situation. She kept yelling from the side, "Who are you trying to scare? So what if you hired a lawyer? As long as you're still married, every dollar she earns belongs to our family. That house of hers, half of it belongs to my boy." I couldn't even be bothered to respond. I said to Taylor, "Taylor, I know what to do now. I'm going home to pack my things. I'll leave the rest to you." "Don't worry," Taylor said, her voice giving me endless strength. "If he dares to lay a finger on you, I'll make sure he pays for it. Come stay with me first. I'll wait for you." After hanging up, I turned to leave. Michael grabbed me again. He was truly scared now, his voice trembling, almost breaking into tears. "Emma, babe, I was wrong. I really was wrong. Let's not get divorced, okay? This was all my mom's idea. It had nothing to do with me. I'll make her remove her name. I'll make her give the money back." He sold his own mother out without the slightest hesitation. Barbara started shaking with rage, pointing at him and screaming, "You ungrateful little brat. You'd say something like that about your own mother for this woman? I raised you for nothing." Watching them turn on each other made me feel sick. I yanked my arm free and looked at Michael coldly. "Michael, it's too late." With that, I turned and walked away without looking back. Behind me were their curses and their frantic tugging at each other. I didn't stop once. When I returned to the home I had run for 10 years, I felt no attachment at all. The air still seemed to carry the mix of Barbara's cheap perfume and the soup I'd spent hours simmering, a nauseating smell. I didn't pack my clothes or my makeup. I walked straight into the study and opened the safe. Inside was every piece of evidence I had quietly saved over the past 10 years before. The safe wasn't big. It was hidden on the very bottom shelf of the bookcase, concealed behind a thick dictionary. It was my secret, one even Michael didn't know about. I entered the code and opened it. There were no gold bars or jewelry inside, only a few document folders. I took out the first folder. Inside were the bank transfer records showing the $1, $2 million my parents had sent me, along with the gift agreement bearing Michael's own handwritten signature. Black and white, clear as day. I took out the second folder. Inside was a thick stack of expense records. Over the past 10 years, every utility bill, HOA fee, our child's tuition, extracurricular classes, even the health supplements Michael bought for his mom and the cash gifts he gave his dad, every single payment that came from me was recorded. For each one, I attached a small sticky note with the amount, along with a transfer screenshot or receipt. Why did I do this? Because of Barbara. From the very first day I married into the Wilson family, she guarded against me like I was a thief. She constantly hinted, sometimes openly, sometimes subtly, that I spent money recklessly, that I funneled money to my own parents, as if I'd taken some massive advantage of the Wilson family. Once, I bought myself a $1,000 coat. When Barbara saw it, she pointed at my nose and scolded me in front of all the relatives, calling me wasteful. She said Michael worked himself to the bone outside, while I stayed home living like a pampered lady, spending half his monthly salary on a single coat. And Michael? He stood right there and said nothing. From that day on, I learned my lesson. You say I spend money? Fine. Every dollar I spend, I'll write it down. I'll let you see exactly who's been supporting this family. Then I took out the third folder. What was inside? That was the real bombshell. A small voice recorder and several memory cards. I turned on the recorder and pressed play. Barbara's shrill voice immediately filled the room. Michael, I'm telling you, my name has to be on that property deed. Otherwise, I won't feel secure. That woman, Emma, may look honest, but she's full of tricks. If the two of you don't work out someday, won't that house just end up being a bargain for her? Then came Michael's hesitant voice. Mom, that doesn't seem right. The down payment came from Emma's parents. If she finds out, she'll definitely be angry. Angry? What's she going to do about it? Once she married into the Wilson family, she became one of us. Her parents' money is our family's money. What are you afraid of? Leave this to me. I've got my ways to make her sign willingly. Just listen to me, and I guarantee you won't lose out. There were many recordings like this. Every time Barbara came over and gave advice to Michael, I would quietly slip the recorder under the sofa cushion in the living room. I always thought I might never need these things. I kept telling myself that Michael would grow up, that he would truly see me as family, that he would stand in front of me and shield me from his mother's unreasonable demands. Now I see how naive I was. I packed all the documents, receipts, and the recorder into my bag. Then I took one last look around this so-called home. Our wedding photo was still hanging on the wall. In it, I was smiling, full of happiness and hope. The irony was unbearable. I walked up to the photo, took it down, and without hesitation, smashed it onto the floor. The sound of the glass shattering was crisp and final, just like my dead heart. Finally, I opened the bedside drawer and took out a velvet box from the very back. Inside was a pearl necklace that looked ordinary at first glance. It had belonged to my grandmother. Before she passed away, she gave me the necklace she treasured most. She told me that a woman must have her own backbone, one that doesn't come from a man, but from herself. The house I owned outright had been bought with another inheritance she left me. I put the necklace around my neck. The cool pearls rested against my skin, yet they made me feel more at ease than ever. Dragging a small suitcase I had prepared long ago, I walked out of that house. When I closed the door, I didn't look back. Goodbye, my foolish 10 years of youth. Hello, Emma. Teaser. Michael and his mother thought I was just throwing a tantrum and would soon give in. They had no idea I was holding a secret powerful enough to destroy them completely. That secret is tied to Michael's carefully crafted image as a good man and involves someone else. Someone they would never expect. And my seemingly honest, simple father? He had his own backup plan long ago. The dowry he prepared for me was far more than just $1. $2 million and a single agreement. 05. I didn't go to see Taylor right away. Instead, I went back to my parents' place first. My parents live in an older apartment complex. The place isn't big, but my mom keeps it clean and cozy. When I pushed the door open, she was busy in the kitchen, and my dad was sitting on the couch in the living room reading the newspaper. Hearing the door, he looked up, and when he saw me pulling a suitcase, his expression darkened immediately. What happened? Did you fight with Michael? My mom poked her head out of the kitchen, too. When she saw my red, swollen eyes, she quickly wiped her hands and came over, grabbing me. Emma, what's going on? Did someone wrong you? The moment I saw the concern in their eyes, I completely broke down. Tears poured out uncontrollably. I collapsed into my mom's arms and sobbed as I told them everything that had happened today. My mom wiped her tears as she listened, shaking with anger. What kind of people are they? That Wilson family has gone way too far. What did our Emma ever do to deserve this? My dad didn't say a word at first. His face grew darker and darker. When I finally finished, he slammed the newspaper onto the coffee table with a dull thud. I told you a long time ago, Michael looks honest, but he has no backbone and lets others make decisions for him. And his mother? She's even worse. I warned you, but you wouldn't listen. You charged straight in. Now you see it, don't you? My dad is a retired middle school teacher. He doesn't talk much, but he's always been sharp about people. Back then, he didn't really approve of me being with Michael. I was the one who refused to listen. Crying, I said, "Dad, I know I was wrong." He sighed, his tone softening. "All right, what's done is done. Since you've decided to leave, then leave cleanly. Don't drag it out." He stood up, went into the bedroom, unlocked a drawer, and took out a brown envelope. He handed it to me. "Take this too." "This is another part of the dowry I prepared for you." I froze. When I opened the envelope, I found a stack of documents inside. The top one was titled Loan Agreement. As I read it, my pupils dilated. The agreement stated clearly that the $200,000 startup capital my parents had given Michael back then was not a gift, but a loan. Michael's handwritten signature and fingerprint were on it, dated 8 years ago. I had no idea about this. Back then, Michael wanted to quit his job and start a business. I thought it was too risky and didn't agree. Later, he somehow came up with $200,000 and got the company off the ground. When I asked where the money came from, he dodged the question and said he borrowed it from friends. So it was my dad he borrowed it from. "He came to me back then," my dad said coldly. "He begged me, said that if I lent him the money, he'd pay it back with interest once the company made money, and he promised he'd treat you well for the rest of his life. I saw that he seemed sincere, and I didn't want to put you in a difficult position, so I lent it to him. But I had one condition. He had to sign this agreement." He agreed to everything just to get the money. My hands were shaking as I held the document. Michael's company was doing well now, making over $1 million in profit every year. But he had never mentioned paying this money back, not once. He had never even admitted to me that the money came from my dad. In his mind, my family's money must have been something that just fell from the sky, free to take, no need to repay. Inside the envelope, besides the loan agreement, there were several photos. In them, Michael was with a young, beautiful woman. They were intimate, eating together, shopping together, and even walking into a hotel together. In the bottom right corner of each photo was the date. The earliest one was from 3 years ago. It felt as if an invisible hand had clenched my heart tightly. The pain was so intense I could barely breathe. That woman is a new assistant at his company. "Her name is Sophia," my dad said, his voice sounding distant. I had someone look into it. Michael spent a lot of money on her. He rented her a luxury apartment, bought her designer bags, and not long ago he even bought her a car. I stared at Michael's face in the photos, soft, affectionate, tender. That kind of smile. He hadn't given me one like that in years. So it wasn't that he had stopped being gentle. He was just being gentle with someone else. The 10-year marriage I believed in had long since become a complete lie. He was shamelessly spending my family's money, living in a home my family paid for, while keeping another woman on the side. Disgusting. I felt a wave of nausea. I gathered all the documents and photos, wiped my tears, and stood up. Facing my parents, I bowed deeply. "Dad, Mom, I'm sorry. I made you worry." My mom helped me up, her eyes full of heartache. "Silly child. You don't need to say that to us. Do whatever you need to do. We're your strongest support." My dad nodded as well. "Remember this, the Davis family doesn't go looking for trouble, but we're never afraid of it. What the Wilson family owes you and owes us, they'll pay back double." I nodded hard. After leaving my parents' place, I went straight to Taylor's law firm. When I laid all the evidence out in front of her, even this seasoned, battle-tested top lawyer couldn't help but curse. "This Michael is absolute trash." She picked up the $200,000 loan agreement, her eyes lighting up. "Emma, we hit the jackpot. An 8-year loan, with interest and penalties. This is no small amount." "What's his company's current ownership structure?" "He owns 70%. There's another partner with 30%, I said. Perfect. Taylor made the call immediately. We're not just demanding cash repayment. We're filing for asset preservation. We'll freeze the company's accounts and seize his equity. I want his business to grind to a halt. When that happens, his partner will be the first one to come after him. Then she picked up the photos. Proof of cheating during the marriage. It may not be enough to completely wipe him out in the divorce, but when marital assets are divided, the judge will favor the innocent party. More importantly, this is a bomb. Once it explodes, it'll ruin him. I looked at Taylor calmly. I don't want to set it off in court. I want to give him an unforgettable surprise somewhere else. Taylor looked at me and smiled. How you want to play it, I'm in. We exchanged a look, and in each other's eyes there was the same spark, cold, excited. The show was about to begin. Over the next few days, I stayed in an apartment Taylor arranged for me and cut off all contact with Michael. He practically blew up my phone, hundreds of messages on WeChat alone. At first came accusations and threats, then apologies and repentance, and finally desperate begging. Emma, I was wrong. Come back. Let's talk this through properly. I know I messed up. It's all my mom's fault. I won't listen to her anymore. Wife, for the sake of the child and our 10 years together, give me one more chance, okay? I looked at those messages and felt nothing but irony. 10 years together. When he was sneaking around with another woman behind my back, did he ever think about those 10 years? My heart no longer stirred for him. Not even a ripple. Barbara called me several times as well. The moment I picked up, she launched into a tirade calling me an ungrateful wretch, accusing me of not knowing my place and threatening that if I dared to divorce Michael, she would go to my workplace and make a scene, ruining my reputation. I didn't say a single word. I hung up and blocked her. With people like her, silence is the best weapon. The more you argue, the more energized they become. Sure enough, just 2 days later, Michael messaged me saying his mother had gotten so angry that she'd fallen ill and was hospitalized, telling me to hurry over and visit her. I replied with 2 words, address. He thought I'd softened. He immediately sent the hospital location and repeatedly reminded me to be polite, to speak gently, to make the old lady happy. I stared at the screen and let out a cold laugh. Go? Of course I'd go. How could I miss such a spectacular show? I didn't head straight to the hospital. First, I went to the mall and bought the latest deluxe fruit basket. Then I stopped by a flower shop and had them wrap a bouquet of the brightest carnations. After that, I sent a message to someone. That someone was the woman in the photos, Sophia. Her contact information had been included in the materials my father gave me. The message was simple. Miss Sophia, I'm Michael's wife, Emma. I'd like to talk to you. If you want to keep everything you have right now, meet me at the cafe on the ground floor of Central Hospital's inpatient building in 30 minutes. I'll only wait half an hour. I was certain she would come. A woman willing to risk everything to be a mistress is usually smart and values her own survival. She knows what matters most. Sure enough, less than 20 minutes after I sat down in the cafe, a young woman in a Chanel suit, impeccably made up, pushed the door open. She scanned the room, and her gaze quickly locked onto me. It was Sophia, looking even younger and more ambitious than in the photos. She sat down across from me without the slightest hint of nervousness, studying me with a faintly appraising look. Miss Emma, why did you ask to see me? She asked bluntly. I smiled and slid the coffee in front of me toward her. Relax, Miss Sophia. I didn't come to rip into you or insult you. I'm here to make a deal. She raised an eyebrow, signaling me to continue. How much does Michael give you every year? I asked. She froze for a moment, clearly not expecting such a direct question, then named a figure. I nodded. Not a small amount. But have you ever thought about this? If Michael's company collapses, everything you have will disappear. Her expression finally changed. What do you mean? Instead of answering, I took out my phone and pulled up a photo of the loan agreement, placing it in front of her. The money Michael used to start his company came from my father. A loan. Now I want it repaid. Principal, interest, and penalties. The total comes to $500,000. Then I pulled up photos of the lawyer's letter and the application for property preservation sent by Taylor's firm. My lawyer is ready to file a lawsuit at any time. Once the case is accepted, his company accounts will be frozen. By then, forget about buying you luxury bags. He won't even be able to pay his employees' salaries. Sophia's face turned deathly pale in an instant. She was smart. She immediately understood what this meant. I looked at her and pressed further. And I also have all the evidence of you two being together. Photos, videos, hotel records. What do you think would happen if I sent all of that to your parents' workplace? To your hometown? Her body began to tremble, fear filling her eyes. I put my phone away, took a sip of coffee, my tone still calm. I told you, I'm not here to threaten you. I'm here to make a deal. What do you want? She asked, biting her lip. Very simple. I met her gaze, speaking slowly and clearly. I want you to go to the hospital and tell Michael's mother the truth. After that, I'll give you a sum of money, enough for you to leave this place, move to another city, and start over. As for how much that money will be, that depends on how well you perform today. 07. Sophia stayed silent for a long time. Soft, soothing music played in the cafe, but the air between us was so tense it felt like a string stretched to the limit, ready to snap at any second. I was gambling. Gambling that her greed would overpower that laughable bit of feeling she had for Michael. At last, she lifted her head and looked at me, her gaze complicated. How do I know I can trust you? You don't have any other choice, I replied calmly. Either you work with me, take a sum of money, and leave with your dignity intact, or we go down together and you end up ruined, with nothing. Choose. She stared at me, as if weighing the truth of my words. After a full minute, she collapsed back into her chair like a deflated balloon. Fine. I'll do it. She squeezed the words out through clenched teeth. What truth do you want me to tell her? I leaned in close to her ear and whispered a few sentences. Her eyes widened more and more, her face filling with disbelief. He actually... I straightened up and smiled faintly. Do you still think he's worth your loyalty now? She shook her head. The last trace of hesitation vanished from her eyes, replaced by anger and resolve born of betrayal. I know what to do, she said. I took a bank card from my bag and placed it on the table. There's 100,000 on this card. After it's done, I'll give you another 200,000. The PIN is 6/8. She picked up the card without another word, stood up, and left. Watching her decisive retreating figure, I knew my second move had been placed. Carrying the fruit basket and flowers, I walked into the inpatient ward. Barbara was in a double room, lying on the bed by the window, whining to the older woman in the next bed. Oh, let me tell you, why is my life so miserable? I worked myself to the bone raising my son, married him off, and what do I get? A heartless, ungrateful daughter-in-law. I just wanted her to add my name to the property deed, give this old woman a bit of security, and she goes straight to talking about divorce. And now she won't even come to the hospital to see me. She's going to anger me to death. Michael sat beside her, peeling an apple, sighing repeatedly. I stopped at the doorway, adjusted my expression, and put on a worried, anxious look before walking in. Mom, how are you? I came straight here after work, but traffic was terrible. I'm so sorry I'm late. My appearance instantly silenced the room. Barbara froze for a moment when she saw me, then turned her face away with a cold snort. Michael, on the other hand, looked as if he'd seen a savior. He jumped up to greet me. Emma, you're finally here. Mom's been talking about you for days. I set the fruit basket and flowers on the bedside table, pulled over a chair attentively, sat down by the bed, and took Barbara's hand. Mom, please don't be angry. This is all my fault. I was too impulsive that day. Don't take it to heart. Adding your name to the property deed? I agree, absolutely agree. As long as you're happy, anything goes. My complete 180-degree turn left both Michael and Barbara stunned. Barbara eyed me suspiciously. Really? Weren't you talking about divorce? Oh, that was just something said in anger, I replied, massaging her arm as I spoke. Couples fight at the head of the bed and make up at the foot of it. Who actually means divorce? Please calm down. If you ruin your health, won't it be us children who feel the most heartache? I delivered my lines with heartfelt sincerity. A look of delight spread across Michael's face. He thought I'd turned back into the Emma he could manipulate at will. Barbara's expression softened as well, a hint of smug satisfaction appearing at the corner of her mouth. She knew it. Emma couldn't survive without her son. She cleared her throat, putting on her matriarchal air. At least you still have a conscience. Fine. Since you're saying all this, I won't hold it against you. Once I'm discharged, we'll go take care of the paperwork. Of course. Whatever you say, I replied, smiling brightly. Just as the atmosphere in the room turned harmonious, a soft, sugary voice suddenly came from the doorway. Michael, how is Auntie doing? I heard Auntie was sick, so I came especially to visit. The three of us turned around at the same time. There stood Sophia, dressed in a white dress, holding an elegant fruit basket of her own. Like a pure white lotus untouched by the dust of the world, she stood at the door, looking at Michael with fragile innocence. Michael's face went completely white in an instant. Oh wait. In that instant, Michael's expression was more colorful than a paint palette. Shock, panic, fear, and a trace of despair. He never would have dreamed that Sophia would show up here. Why are you here? He even started stuttering, his eyes darting frantically from me to his mother, like a cat whose tail had just been stepped on. Barbara hadn't caught on yet. She looked at the impossibly beautiful young woman in front of her and asked in confusion, Michael, who is this? I stood up and, at just the right moment, put on a look of surprise mixed with hurt. I looked at Michael, my eyes instantly filling with tears. Michael, who is this girl? Why have I never seen her before? That single performance cornered Michael with no way out. Sophia was a natural actress too. She glanced at Michael, then at me, and an aggrieved, innocent expression appeared on her face. Tears came on cue, sliding down her cheeks. Auntie, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to disturb you, she said as she walked to the bedside and set down the fruit basket, her voice trembling. I was just so worried about you. Michael always tells me that you're the most important person in his life. That one sentence carried an enormous amount of information. Even Barbara, slow as she was, sensed something was wrong. She looked at Sophia, then at her son, who seemed utterly lost, and her face immediately darkened. What exactly is your relationship with Michael? Sophia bit her lip and said nothing, only lowering her head as tears kept falling. That posture spoke louder than any confession. The auntie in the other bed had already pricked up her ears, her eyes gleaming with gossip. I lunged toward Michael, grabbed his arm, and cried as I demanded, Michael, say something. Who is she, really? Do you have another woman out there? How could you do this to me? My sobbing was like a command. As if she'd finally made up her mind, Sophia suddenly looked up at Barbara and, with a thud, dropped to her knees. Auntie! I'm sorry. Michael and I truly love each other. I'm already pregnant with his child. Boom! Those words exploded like a thunderclap in the small hospital room. Barbara's eyes flew wide open. She pointed at Sophia, then at Michael, her lips trembling so hard she couldn't get a single word out. Michael completely lost it. He rushed forward, trying to pull Sophia up. What nonsense are you talking about? Get up, now! But Sophia stayed firmly on her knees. She pulled an ultrasound report from her bag and held it high over her head. Auntie, look. This is the hospital report. I've been pregnant for 2 months. It's a boy. A boy. Those 2 words were like a sharp blade piercing straight into Barbara's heart. She had dreamed of having a grandson. I had given birth to a daughter, and over the years she'd never missed a chance to give me a hard time because of it. Now a young, beautiful woman was kneeling in front of her, telling her she was carrying her son's child, and it was a boy. Barbara's mind descended into total chaos. She shoved Michael aside, snatched the ultrasound report, and examined it back and forth. She couldn't really understand it, but she recognized the tiny gestational sac and the words early pregnancy. She could no longer pretend to be sick. She suddenly sat up in bed and pointed at Michael, screaming curses at him. You animal! How could you do something so shameless behind our backs? You've completely disgraced me. Then she turned and pointed at me. And you too, Emma. You useless woman. You can't even keep your own man in line. Married 10 years, and you still couldn't give birth to a son. What good are you? I sneered inwardly. There she was. When something goes wrong, it's always someone else's fault. I covered my face and cried even louder. Mom, how would I know? He came home on time every day. I thought he was a good man. I never imagined he'd lie to me like this. My sobbing, Sophia's crying, Barbara's shouting, and Michael's frantic excuses tangled together, turning the ward into utter chaos. The auntie in the neighboring bed watched with relish, even pulling out her phone as if to record the scene. Just as the farce reached its peak, I wiped my tears, straightened up, and walked over to Barbara. From my bag, I took out the loan agreement and the stack of intimate photos of Michael and Sophia, gently placing them on her blanket. Mom, please don't rush to scold anyone yet. Take a look at these first. My voice wasn't loud, but it was unusually clear, instantly cutting through all the noise. Everyone fell silent and looked at me. Barbara picked up the agreement in confusion and stared at it for a long time, not quite understanding. I explained for her. Mom, don't you remember? 8 years ago, the $200,000 Michael used to start his company was borrowed from my father. It's all written here in black and white. A loan, not a gift. Now that I'm divorcing him, this money needs to be repaid. According to the agreement, principal plus interest comes to a total of $500,000. The blood drained from Barbara's face in an instant. Then I pointed to the photos. And these. Your son didn't just meet Miss Sophia recently. They've been together for 3 years. Your son has been spending what you call his hard-earned money on Miss Sophia, renting her an apartment, buying her a car, luxury bags. He's been very generous. With every sentence I spoke, Michael's face turned a shade paler. Finally, I looked at Sophia, who was still kneeling on the floor, and smiled. Oh, right. Miss Sophia, you just said you're pregnant with a boy, didn't you? Sophia nodded. I took out the last document from my bag, a hospital medical report, and handed it to Barbara. Mom, this medical report is from Michael's company health check last month. You'd better read it yourself. Barbara took the report with trembling hands. When her eyes landed on the line labeled sperm motility and the conclusion that followed, her eyes suddenly widened, as if they were about to pop out of their sockets. It stated clearly, severe asthenospermia, probability of natural conception, nearly 0. 09. The entire world went silent. Barbara clutched that thin medical report, her hands shaking like leaves in an autumn wind. She looked at the report, then at Sophia kneeling on the floor, then at her son, whose face was ashen. Her already pale face turned a livid shade of gray. What is going on? Her voice sounded as if it were being squeezed out of her throat, dry and hoarse. With a thud, Michael dropped to his knees as well, kneeling beside his mother's bed. He had completely collapsed. Hugging Barbara's legs, he burst into loud sobs. Mom, I was wrong. I was really wrong. I lost my mind. I'm not even human. That breakdown was a full confession in itself. Barbara suddenly raised her hand and slapped Michael hard across the face. Smack! The sound was sharp and loud, echoing through the silent ward. You animal? Where am I supposed to put this old face of mine now? Still not satisfied, she grabbed the apples from the bedside table and hurled them at Michael. I'll beat you to death, you unfilial son. You didn't even know you can't have children, and you still went out fooling around with some wild woman. Are you trying to wipe out the Wilson family line? As she cursed, she turned all her fury on Sophia. And you little slut, whose bastard is in your belly, huh? How dare you pin it on our Michael? What were you plotting? Sophia was stunned by this sudden reversal. She had never imagined Michael had such a problem. She stared at him, her eyes filled with fury and hatred born of betrayal. She stood up, wiped away her tears, and let out a cold laugh. Auntie, now you see what kind of trash your son really is, don't you? He's a liar. He lied to me, and he lied to all of you. Whose child this is doesn't even matter anymore. What matters is that Michael is a complete and utter waste of a man. With that, she picked up her bag. She didn't spare Michael another glance, clicking away on her high heels and leaving without looking back. All that remained in the ward were Barbara's curses and Michael's crying. I stood amid the wreckage like a detached spectator, calmly appreciating the farce I had personally directed. The auntie in the next bed was already staring, dumbfounded. I walked over to her and said with a smile, "Auntie, sorry for disturbing your rest. The video you recorded just now, could you send me a copy? I'd like to keep it as a souvenir." She froze for a moment, then immediately caught on and nodded, deftly sending the video to me. I had obtained the final piece of evidence I wanted. I walked up to Michael and looked down at him. "Michael, let's talk about the divorce terms." He looked up at me, his face soaked with tears, eyes full of pleading. "Emma, honey, please give me one more chance. I'll never dare again." "A chance?" I smiled. "I gave you 10 years of chances. You destroyed them with your own hands." I slapped the divorce agreement, already drafted by Taylor, down in front of him. First, the marital home. The down payment was paid by my parents and is my personal property. Over the past 10 years, most of the mortgage was paid from our joint income. But you are seriously at fault and have long used marital assets to support a mistress. Therefore, the house belongs to me, and I will continue paying the remaining mortgage. As compensation, I can give you $100,000. Second, the $200,000 you borrowed from my father 8 years ago, principal plus interest totaling $500,000, must be repaid within 1 week. Otherwise, my lawyer will immediately apply to freeze your company's accounts and your shares. Third, our daughter's custody goes to me. You will pay $5,000 a month in child support until she turns 18. You have visitation rights, but only at times and places approved by me. Fourth, I said, looking straight at him, enunciating every word, you must leave with nothing. Michael's face could no longer be described as pale. It was as if all life had been drained from him in an instant, and he collapsed limply onto the floor. After hearing my terms, Barbara went berserk. She jumped out of bed and lunged toward me, trying to tear at me. "Emma, you vicious woman. You're trying to drive us mother and son to death? I'll fight you to the end." I took a step back and looked at her coldly. "Mom, you'd better think this through. If we divorce by agreement, your family can still preserve the last shred of dignity. But if this goes to court, everything that happened in this war today and all the recordings, photos, and videos I have will become courtroom evidence. By then, Michael won't just lose everything he owns. He'll be utterly disgraced. He won't be able to hold his head up for the rest of his life." My words were like a bucket of ice water poured straight over Barbara's head. She froze in place, her eyes filled with fear. What did she love most? Her reputation. If forced to choose between her son and her face, she would choose the latter without hesitation. I looked at the despair on the faces of the mother and son and felt no satisfaction, only a sense of calm, as if dust had finally settled. I placed the pen on the divorce agreement. "Sign it. This is the best ending you're going to get." Then, in the end, Michael signed. His hand shook uncontrollably as he wrote his name, going out of the lines several times. Barbara stood behind him, like a statue drained of its soul, ashen-faced, completely lifeless. On the day the divorce was finalized, the weather was, once again, brilliantly sunny. As I walked out of the civil affairs office, the sunlight fell warmly on my body. I glanced back at Michael, who stood there with his head lowered. He looked as if he had aged 10 years in an instant. He looked at me, his lips moving as if he wanted to say something. But in the end, he said nothing. Between us, there was nothing left to say. A few days later, Taylor told me that Michael had put the apartment, the one he and his mother had schemed over for half their lives, up for sale. In order to quickly scrape together the $500,000 he owed my father, he listed it at an extremely low price. After learning that Michael was deeply in debt and that the company could be shut down at any moment, his business partner immediately demanded to dissolve their partnership and insisted that Michael return the full amount of his investment. Michael was overwhelmed and desperate, begging everywhere to borrow money. But when a wall collapses, everyone pushes it. No one was willing to help him. I heard that in the end, he was forced to sell the old apartment his mother had lived in for decades just to barely plug the hole. Barbara fell seriously ill because of it and completely collapsed. The mother and son moved into a rented place, small, cramped, and dark. As for me, I moved into the large house I had bought outright, together with my daughter. The house was fully furnished, with windows facing both north and south, flooded with sunlight. On the balcony, I planted all kinds of flowers. My daughter now had her own princess room and was happy every single day like a little angel. My parents often came to stay for short visits. My mom experimented with new recipes every day, feeding both me and my daughter until we were rosy and well-fed. My dad took charge of teaching his granddaughter chess and calligraphy. Our home was filled with laughter every day. Only then did I truly understand what my grandmother used to say. A woman's strength has never come from a man. It comes from her own foresight, her own ability, and a heart that never abandons itself. That day, as I was watering the flowers on the balcony, my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. I answered, and a cautious voice came through. Is this Sister Emma? It was Michael's younger sister, Emily Wilson. Yes, Emily. What's going on? Sis, I'm sorry. I know everything about what my brother and my mom did. They deserved it. There was a trace of satisfaction in her voice, mixed with sadness. I just wanted to thank you. Thank you for freeing me from that family too. She told me she had already moved out and found a job of her own. It was hard work, but she felt free. We talked for a long time. Before hanging up, she suddenly said, "Oh, right, sis. Do you know, the child of Sophia's, she's not my brother's at all. She'd been having an affair with her boss for a long time. She just wanted to find my brother to take the fall. Too bad. My brother himself was nothing but an empty shell." I smiled lightly. I know. In fact, ever since I got Michael's medical report, I had already guessed it. A woman scheming so carefully to climb up would never get pregnant without 100% certainty. Most likely, she was betting on two men at once, and in the end, both bets failed. Cause and effect in this world can be strangely poetic. After hanging up, I looked at the deep blue sky outside the window and took a long breath of air scented with flowers. From my pocket, I took out a cheap plastic pen, the very one Barbara had shoved into my hand at the property office that day. I had kept it as a reminder of the humiliation I endured. But now, I felt there was no need anymore. I walked to the window and threw the pen out with all my strength. It traced a small arc through the air and disappeared into the grass below. Everything in the past was over. And the new life that belonged to me, Emma, was only just beginning.